So once again, I'm Cariño Casas. I'm the director of the church's ministry among Jewish people, and I'm the tour leader for this tour called Paul, the Jewish People, and Greece. And this is a 9-day tour with flights out of New York City, round trip, and you know what? I didn't put any maps in here, but that's all right. But we're going to walk through the itinerary. Just know that we're going to go north to south. Who are we? We're the church's ministry among Jewish people. We're the oldest of the Jewish outreach agencies in the world. We were founded in 1809 by a Jewish believer named Joseph Levi Frey. And we founded Christ Church Jerusalem. For those who know, it's the oldest Protestant church in the Middle East. It's Anglican church. And that's a historical photo back from, I think it's the 1880s, very early days of photography. And that's how I come to CMJ. I served at Christ Church Jerusalem many years ago, and the Lord brought me to the US office here in Ambridge. And so we're the tour leaders. We're the ministry undergirding this tour, and we're in cooperation with Shoresh Study Tours. Shoresh Study Tours is an arm of CMJ Israel. So CMJ is in 10 countries today. We're here in the US, and our chief location is in Israel. We have 2 churches, one in Jerusalem, one in Jaffa, and we have a school, we have a mercy ministry, we have guest houses, and we have the tour company. Shora Study Tours has been around for 40 years. We pioneered having Jewish believers as guides, teaching the scriptures as you walk the land. And last year, for the first time, we expanded our reach and went to Greece to look at Paul and his Jewishness and how that affects how we read and understand the scriptures. So that's who is running this tour. And then we have I'll introduce you to our logistics partner at the end, who is doing all the setup for us. So let's get started here. So we're going to go over the itinerary, and we are starting. Let me just shrink this a little bit. There we go. The tour starts October the 22nd. We will be departing the US from New York City. Don't know which airport yet. Last time we flew out of JFK. That's probably likely if we fly El Al or Delta again. Not El Al, Delta, sorry. And so the price that we will talk about towards the end includes flights from New York. And so then it's either up to you to get yourself to New York, or you can actually call the tour company and they will add a flight from your city base for a few $100s more, which is what we'll do for anybody coming out of Pittsburgh here. So then we're going to land on day 2. We're going to arrive in Thessaloniki. So this tour is a little different. We're going to start in the north. We're going to do this in chronological order according to the book of Acts. Last year we did it in reverse, and some people commented on that. We started in Corinth and worked our way up. So this time we're going to start where Paul started, up in the north, because Paul crossed over from Asia Minor into the Greek peninsula, and then it started in Neapolis. So we're going to fly into Thessaloniki, and that'll be an overnight transatlantic flight. And then we'll actually just take it easy that day. And my hope, we're still working out on these logistics. My hope is that the hotel room will be somewhere near town so that we can have the freedom to explore Thessaloniki on our own that first night and just get acclimated. So day 3, we get busy, and we're going to have a long, busy day. We're going to go up to Philippi. I think we are going to stop in Amphipolis as well and stop and look at the ruins there and discuss Greek history, a little bit of mythology, so that we can get oriented into the pagan world that Paul walks into. And Philippi was a beautiful site. It's large. It's a substantial archaeological site. And we'll walk through that site. We'll consider also the church at Philippi that was established there, and hopefully engage a little bit with the letter to the Philippians. And then we'll go to the Lydia baptismal site. This was one of the favorite spots for everybody last year. It's just a beautiful spot. It's outside the city. It's the traditional spot where Paul met Lydia, if you remember in the book of Acts. There was no synagogue in Philippi because the Jewish community in Philippi wasn't big enough to support a synagogue. And so Jews in ancient times, when they didn't have a community building, they would meet at the river. Why? Because that's where they would do a mikvah. They would baptize themselves to cleanse themselves before prayers. And that is where Paul goes on a Saturday morning to go worship. And he meets this God-fearing woman, Lydia, who becomes the first person to come to faith in Greece. A beautiful site. We'll spend some time there. And then we'll drive up to Neapolis and look at the port where Paul came in, and we'll also see a piece of the Ignatian Way, which was the old ancient Roman, one of the main Roman roads that ran through Greece. And certainly Paul and Timothy and some others from the early church would have walked that road on their way in. So we'll do that on day 3, and we'll stop back and spend the night in Thessaloniki. So day 4, we will spend the whole day in Thessaloniki, and we're going to do a Jewish heritage tour. CMJ has been around since 1809, and we were in all the major Jewish centers of Europe. Thessaloniki has been a center of Jewish life for 2,000 years, more than 2,000 years. And so we had a mission station there. So we're going to look at some of the CMJ history in Thessaloniki. We're going to go to one of the synagogues there in Thessaloniki, and we'll go to the Jewish Museum where we will hear about this long Jewish history. And then after lunch, we're going to tour the city and stop at the Holocaust Museum. Unfortunately, the vibrancy of the Jewish community in Thessaloniki is cut short by World War II and the Holocaust. I think it's, I don't know, something like 80% of Thessaloniki's Jews were deported to the death camps. And so we're going to commemorate that and remember. And then we'll look at some other historical sites, such as the Arch of Galerius and the White Tower and the Hagia Sophia, one of the really historic churches there. And then we'll have dinner, and we'll stay another night in Thessaloniki. Then from Thessaloniki on day 5, we will drive over to Veria, which is biblical Berea. This was another favorite site for us. We're going to stop at the site of the old synagogue in town. There's no more Jewish community in Berea, unfortunately, but there's a Greek woman who took it upon herself to revive the history and revive the old synagogue building there. And it is thought to be built on the ruins of all the synagogues that have been in that area. So it is likely, and it's too bad they haven't done the archaeological dig yet, but it is likely that the ancient synagogue visited by Paul and Timothy is at the base of this building. So we'll spend some time there, and then we'll visit the Bema of Paul, which is a traditional site where the church says that Paul preached in Berea. And so we'll take a moment there, have lunch there in Berea, and then we'll drive up to Meteora. Fascinating, just mountains. Really, they're sandstone mountains, so they've worn in a really unique pattern. Beautiful, beautiful, just sight of nature. And the home of many, many monasteries. And so I'm hoping we have enough time to visit one of the monasteries there so we can engage with the question of, well, the gospel really did take in Greece, and this is the expression of Christianity that formed in Greece. And so we'll look at that, and we'll be talking about those things. Last time we had some more kind of evangelical people, and we're encountering this very Orthodox Christian tradition everywhere we went. So it gives us space, excuse me. It gives us space to also discuss the many facets of Christianity that have formed in 2,000 years. And then we'll spend the night in Trikala. On day 6, we'll drive up to Mount Metamorphosis, where there's another monastery that celebrates the transfiguration of Christ. And I think that'll be another good place for us to discuss the Jewishness of the gospel and how Paul contextualized it so well for this pagan world. But we'll also leave some free time for contemplation and for prayer. And then from there, we'll go to Delphi. Delphi is an archaeological museum, and it's got some important things. The most important biblical thing that has there is the Gallio inscription, which helps us date Paul's life and his travels, because we know exactly when Gallio was where, and the fact that Paul encounters Gallio in Corinth helps us understand the timeline of Paul's missionary journeys. And so that's one of the really important things there in Delphi. But the other thing about Delphi that was important for me, and I think is important for all students of the Bible, is it's a museum about the pagan religion. Delphi was the site of a very important temple to Apollo that was there for 2,300 years, which is an astounding number. That's further away than we are now from Paul. And so to understand the depth of the paganism that Paul walks into is really important. And that's what Delphi will do for us. And understand, for me, the chutzpah of this Jewish rabbi, unknown Jewish rabbi, to walk into pagan Greece and say, no, no, I've got the God you want. And so that'll be really good up there at Delphi. And then from Delphi, we will drive over to Athens and, I believe, spend the night in Athens. So day 7, we will actually do Athens, and we will look at the modern city and the parliament and the tomb of the unknown soldier, the Olympic Stadium. But then we will go up to the Acropolis. And the Acropolis, of course, very well-known image of the Temple of the Parthenon and Temple to Athena, Nike as well, and also the site of Mars Hill, where Paul preached this sermon, very important sermon that's in Acts 17. And we'll discuss what's going on there. Is this a debate? Is this a trial? What is happening in Acts 17 that Paul gives this sermon? So we'll do that there, and then in the evening we'll drive a little bit more of Athens and have some wonderful dinner. And then our big last day of touring, day 8, is Corinth. Corinth is has the largest archaeological park in Greece. It is a phenomenal site and a really well-made museum. And so we'll spend time there. Before we go to the museum in Corinth, we'll stop at the Isthmus of Corinth to understand the little piece of land that holds the Peloponnese to the rest of the Greek peninsula, and engage with some of that logistics and geography. And then we'll go to Corinth, and we're going to see the bema of Gallio, before which Paul was brought, and just really contemplate Paul's time in Corinth. And we'll also probably look at the community of Corinth. We'll discuss, well, why is Paul writing these letters to Corinth, and why is he having to be so hard on them? So we'll look a little bit at that as well. We'll probably, last time we had lunch in Acrocorinth, which is Upper Corinth. Not sure how that'll play out, but we'll spend some time a little bit in Acrocorinth, and then we'll stop at the ruins of Cariño. Cariño was the port city that served Corinth and is the hometown of Phoebe the deacon in Acts 18. So another really great biblical stop. And then day 9, we will go back after this. We'll go back into Athens and have the afternoon free for shopping, and then we'll finish with a big dinner in Athens and spend the night in Athens. And then October the 30th, we'll all fly home from the Athens airport with much to think about, much to pray about, and much to study about. So before I go on to the next thing, comments or questions? Okay.
I'm excited.
Yes.
I mean, it sounds amazing. Yeah.
All right. Well, all right. So let's talk about what is needed. U.S. citizens do not need a separate visa to go into the EU. Greece is an EU country. What you do need is for your passport to be current, and it must be valid for at least 6 months from the time of entry. So since we're going in on October the 22nd or the 23rd, it cannot expire before May 22nd of 2027. So you must have a current passport. Packing, we encourage people to pack lightweight, breathable clothing, always in layers. We're going in October. It'll probably be a little warmer than it was when we went in November last year. So probably for Pittsburgh weather, the Pittsburghers do really well there. So we got a little bit of rain. But for people coming from the other parts of the country, just be sure that you have layers. It'll probably be in the 70s, possibly into the 80s, depending where we are. But when we're up high on certain places, the wind will be blowing and it'll be a lot cooler. Comfortable shoes and the basics that you need for travel. We definitely encourage people to bring a water bottle so that you can always be hydrating, a Bible so you can follow along as we're going to the different sites, a journal to keep track of what you're learning, what you're seeing, what the Lord's telling to you, talking to you in the midst. Of course, a camera phone. I also suggest a backup battery. Most people use their phone as their camera now, and so bring a battery pack to give your phone a boost in the middle of the day. That's super important. We do want people to be prepared to walk 2 to 3 miles a day. We won't go very fast, but especially like Philippi and Corinth, they're really large archaeological parks and museums. There'll be a lot of walking and standing. Berea, we'll walk around some inclines there. Athens, we have to walk up to the Acropolis, and that is a walk for people who can't navigate the rocky stairs. They do have a smooth path. But once you get into there, I mean, you're going to have stairs. They're just the way it is. So know your limitations. The monasteries are tough climbs. Last year we had a few people who sat out of those. So there is an option. Like if we get to a site and you're like, I don't know that I can climb up to that one, there's usually 1 or 2 people who will be waiting by the bus. But so just understand your limitations there. This is a study tour, and so I have some suggested reading, as I mentioned before. And so I'm going to tell you some of the things that I'm engaging with as I'm preparing for this trip. The one I recommend for everybody is Paul, a biography by N.T. Wright. It is a biography, but it is written a little bit novelized, so it's an easy read. It's not academic, it's at a reachable level for most people. And he does a wonderful job of telling Paul's life and bringing in those Jewish and Pharisee details that we're trying to hold on to, that this tour is focusing on, to put Paul into his context and then understand the audacity of God to call this Pharisee to go preach the gospel of the Messiah to the Gentiles. So that's the one I recommend everybody read if they want to do a starter read. The next one that it's been very helpful for me in many respects, it is a commentary on First Corinthians, but if you read kind of the opening chapters and some of the closing chapters, it gives you the cultural context of Corinth and so thereby Greece. Paul Through Mediterranean Eyes by Kenneth Bailey. Kenneth Bailey served as a missionary in the Middle East for many years. He served in in Jordan and in Israel, and I believe in Egypt. And so what is so amazing about this commentary is he brings in commentaries that we in the West don't always engage with. So Arabic language, Aramaic, Syriac, and some of the stuff that's been lost to us in the West because we read everything that's in Latin and Greek, and he brings some of this Arabic and Aramaic context back in to understand. So this is a really important one to understand the Mediterranean context of the time. Another writer that's very important to me is Mark Nanos, Paul Within Judaism, Restoring the First Century Context to the Apostle. This isn't a big book. It is a little more academic. Mark Nanos is a Jewish man who does not believe in Jesus, and he's very clear about that in his writings. But he loves Paul, and he's a Paul expert. And he is among a group of scholars that are trying to bring Paul back into Judaism and say, no, he never left Judaism. Paul didn't think he was starting a new religion. He just knew the Messiah had come, and it started to change the way he viewed his Judaism. And so Mark Nanos is super important for that. So that's a really good read to prep for this tour. Some other people in that vein, Paul, the Jewish Theologian by Brad Young. For those who know David Pileggi at Christ Church Jerusalem, and there's another scholar named Stephen Notley who does a lot of archaeological work and is actually the founder of Shoresh Study Tours. They all studied together at Hebrew University. And Brad Young's book is another really good intro to put Paul back into his Jewish context. Paul, the Pagan's Apostle by Paula Fredrickson. This one, read it with a lot of salt. This is the one I read most recently. Fascinating. I think Paula pulls out some really important details, but she is biased because she grew up Christian. She converted to Judaism in college. She comes from a very Jewish point of view. So again, she doesn't believe the gospel. She doesn't believe in Jesus, but she's fascinated by the person of Paul. And also Jesus. She writes a lot on the early church, coming from a Jewish point of view. So we won't agree with everything Paula has to say, but she brings out some really important details of how Paul is engaging as a Jew, as a Pharisee, with the Greek world. And then just for people who want something a little more dense and look at the broader overview, In the Shadow of the Temple, Jewish Influences on Early Christianity. Very important book to show the undergirding of what's happening in Judaism at large, both in Israel and in the diaspora, to then understand how Christianity forms out of temple worship. So that's an important book. These are books I haven't engaged with yet, but they're on my reading list. So I may have read them by the time the trip happens. I may have not. Salonika, City of Ghosts. It talks about the broader history of Thessaloniki, particularly from the Ottoman period to post-World War II, to understand the interplay between Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. And so we're gonna touch on that a little bit when we're in Thessaloniki. The Jews Among the Greeks and Romans by Max Rodin, Jewish writer, Jewish historian. Just discovered this title, so I'm hoping to have read that before the trip. And in a similar vein, a little more recent, The Jews in the Roman World by Michael Grant. I'm very interested. This is a British scholar who writes on the Roman world, so I'm looking forward to that. And I'm really looking forward to Paul, a New Covenant Jew by Brant Pitre and some others. Brant Pitre is an important Catholic writer. He's bringing the Jewish roots of the context of the New Testament into Catholic thought. He's got a really good book called The Jewish Roots of the Eucharist and The Jewish Roots of Mary, Jesus and the Jewish Roots of Mary, that are important books. Again, don't agree with him on everything. So I'm super excited to see what he has to say about Paul and putting Paul back into his Jewish context. So any one of these books that grabs you, if you can pick it up on Kindle or find it used, I recommend. Okay, here's some contact info. If you need assistance, if you're looking to register and you need assistance, our logistics partner is Revelate Travel. So we have Shore Study Tours, which is the main tour company. But for our logistics, because Shore Study Tours only worked in Israel for a long time and we're growing into Greece. So we brought in another partner to help us in a new country. So it's Revelate Travel. It's another Christian-based company. And the guy who got us in is the vice president, David Welch, who is actually a Jewish believer. So I've been very excited to work with him. So if you have any questions about the logistics, about the flying, what's it like to add, how much is it going to cost me to add to fly from my city, then you would contact Revelate with those questions. So there's Revelate's email and Revelate's phone number. If you have other types of questions, like what should I be reading, what should I be bringing, and things like that, then you can direct those questions to me. And there's my email address. If you call Revelate, they'll want to know what tour we're looking at. And so there's our tour info. It's tour NX26. The date is the date that we start, October 22, 26. I think those two pieces of information will get you quickly with Revelate. If not, you just tell them, I'm looking for the Jewish Paul tour with CMJ, and they'll connect you. Deadlines, price jumps. So right now, that's a typo, guys. That is a typo. I wonder if I can fix that right now. Typo. It's not going to let me. It's 4398 is the early bird price. I apologize. That's the early bird price. That price is good until June 29th. That includes flights from New York. Again, if you want to fly from your own city, you can call Revelate and they'll tell you how much it is to fly from your own city, or you can use, your own flight or drive or wherever you are to get yourself to New York. And then on June 30th, the price goes up another $100, and then it'll be $44.98 through July 24th. And then it goes up again on July 25th. So if you're interested, I recommend you register by June 29th. You can register online at cmj-usa.org/Greece 2026. You can also register by phone. There's the phone number. The phone number is also on the website. And again, you would tell them this is the tour that I'm on, NX26, October the 22nd. But I recommend you start online. One of the other things I will tell you about Revelate is Revelate wants you to pay by bank transfer and not credit card. If you want to pay by credit card, they will charge you the credit card fees on top of that. So they do have a website that they'll send you a link to pay by e-check, and that's the quickest and safest way to do it. Is you just punch in your information and they'll do a bank draft from you, and then you don't get charged a credit card fee. So that if you want to pay by credit card, calculate that it's going to be about 3% more. All right. Questions? Comments?
I read somewhere, I think a couple of weeks ago, about needing to have documentation of our passport being good. For me, it's not an issue because I just got my brand new passport yesterday. It was delivered to me. So, but I didn't know about them having to have a copy to confirm. Did I read that correctly?
Yeah, so when you register, they will ask for your passport number and your expiration dates. And then
Okay.
they will probably, I think they did ask us to send scans of that photo page on the passport. And so, yeah, they'll want to have that. And as you walk through the registration process, they'll ask for that information. The one thing I did forget to put on the slides is travel insurance is required, and you can buy through Revelate, but you can also use your preferred travel insurance vendor. You don't have to use the insurance that Revelate sells, but you can put it all within and pay Revelate. And then if you don't have a preferred one and you want to shop around, I have an agent that I use when I travel, so I can send you that information.